Part 1, The Last Serving. Stood alone in his empty restaurant. The chairs were stacked on the tables. The kitchen was clean and cold. The neon sign above the door that said Tara's Table flickered one last time and went dark. He had turned it off himself. 3 years. He had spent 3 years on Station 7, cooking food for aliens who had never tasted Earth cuisine before. 3 years of early mornings and late nights. 3 years of teaching the galaxy what a hamburger was, what curry meant, why soup made people feel better when they were sad. Now it was over. Walked slowly through his restaurant, running his fingers along the counter where he had served thousands of meals. He remembered the first day he opened. A tall, gray-skinned had walked in, sniffed the air, and asked what that wonderful smell was. Had told him it was bacon. They had eaten 4 plates of it and came back every single day after that. But the spice shop next door was closed now. The owner had left last month. The fungal specialist across the walkway was gone too. One by one, every small food vendor on the station had disappeared. The reason was simple. The consortium had passed a new law called the Nutritional Efficiency Mandate. The law said that food was just fuel for the body, nothing more. The most efficient fuel was a small gray cube that contained everything a body needed. It took 3 seconds to eat. It cost almost nothing to make. And it tasted like absolutely nothing at all. Why would anyone spend an hour eating slow-cooked pot roast when they could swallow a cube and get back to work? The answer was that they wouldn't. At first, had kept his regular customers. They told him they loved his food too much to switch to cubes, but then their bosses started giving them shorter lunch breaks. Then the cube dispensaries started giving discounts. Then the consortium started adding extra taxes to inefficient food preparation. One by one, his customers stopped coming. Reached up and took down the menu that hung on the wall. It was hand-painted on real paper, which was rare and expensive in space. His grandmother had made it for him before he left Earth. She had painted pictures of dishes from 6 different continents. Next to each picture, she had written the history of that dish in her beautiful handwriting. "This is your heritage," she had told him when she gave it to him. Her hands had been shaking because she was very old and very sick. "Promise me you will share it with the stars." He had promised. He had held her hand and sworn that he would keep the tradition alive. She had died 2 days later. And now was breaking his promise. He was giving up. He had failed her. He rolled up the menu carefully and put it in his bag. He would take it back to Earth with him. Maybe he would hang it on his wall and look at it sometimes. Maybe he would open a small restaurant somewhere quiet. Maybe he would just cook for himself and remember the old days. He walked to the door and reached for the control panel that would lock it forever. Something tugged at his sleeve. Looked down, expecting to see a piece of cloth caught on a nail. Instead, he saw a dragon. She was tiny, no bigger than a. Her scales were blue, but they were dull and faded, not shiny like they should have been. Her wings were folded against her back and they looked thin and weak. Her eyes were huge and amber-colored, and they were looking up at him with an expression he could not quite understand. "Don't leave," she said. Her voice was soft and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Please." Stared at her. He knew what she was. He had seen pictures of them but never met one in person. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, ancient and powerful and respected by everyone. But they were also very rare. Seeing one was like seeing a living legend. This one, however, did not look powerful at all. She looked sick. She looked tired. She looked like she had not eaten properly in a very long time. "I'm sorry," said gently. "The restaurant is closed. I don't have any food left." "You do," the little dragon said. "I can smell it in the cold box, chicken and rice and ginger." Blinked, she was right. He had some leftover ingredients from his last attempt at cooking. He had planned to throw them away. "That's just scraps," he said. "It's not a real meal." "Please," the dragon's voice cracked. "Your food is the only thing that doesn't make me sick." Something in the way she said it made his heart hurt. He looked at her thin wings and her dull scales and her huge, desperate eyes. He thought about his grandmother, who had never turned away a hungry person in her entire life. "Okay," he said quietly. "Come inside, I'll make you something." He went to the kitchen and started cooking. It was nothing fancy. Just congee, the rice porridge his mother used to make when he was sick as a child. Rice cooked slowly in broth until it became soft and creamy. Fresh ginger sliced thin. A little bit of chicken pulled into small pieces. A drop of sesame oil on top. He brought the bowl out to the dining area. The little dragon was sitting on his counter, waiting. When she saw the bowl, her whole body seemed to lean toward it. "Be careful," said, "it's hot." She didn't listen. She buried her face in the bowl and started eating like she hadn't eaten in weeks. Maybe she hadn't. Watched her, and as she ate, something strange happened. Her scales started to change. The dull, faded blue began to brighten, just a little, just enough to notice. The door opened behind him. Turned and saw the biggest living creature he had ever seen in his life. It was another, but this one was ancient and enormous. It had to bend almost in half to fit through the door. Its scales were deep gold, and its eyes burned with intelligence that was older than human civilization. "Human," the great dragon said, and its voice made the whole restaurant shake. "I am sovereign. I see you have met my granddaughter." The little dragon looked up from her bowl. Kanji was dripping from her chin. "Grandfather," she said happily, "I found him. I found the one whose food has a soul." Did not know what that meant. But looking at the little dragon's brightening scales and hopeful eyes, he had a feeling his restaurant was not going to close after all. Part 2, The Starving Hatchling. The little dragon's name was, and she was dying. Learned this over the next hour as he sat in his dark restaurant with two dragons, one tiny and one enormous. Told him the story while finished her third bowl of congee, and then curled up on the counter like a satisfied cat. "Our kind is very old," explained. His massive body filled half the restaurant, but his voice was now soft and gentle. "We were flying between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have watched species discover the secrets of the universe and then forget them again." Nodded. He had read about the in school. Everyone had. They were living history. "But we are not like other species," continued. "We do not eat food the way you do. Yes, we need nutrients. Yes, we need calories, but we also need something else. Something that has no name in your language. The closest word might be intention, or perhaps love, or perhaps memory." "I don't understand," said. Pointed one great claw at the empty bowl in front of. "When you made that dish, what were you thinking about?" Considered the question. "I was thinking about my mother. She used to make congee for me when I was sick. It always made me feel better, safe, loved." "Yes," said. We eat that. When food is made with care, with tradition, with love, it carries something invisible inside it. To most species, this invisible thing means nothing. But to us, it is essential. Without it, we starve." Looked at, her scales were definitely brighter now than they had been an hour ago. But she still looked thin and weak. "The nutrient cubes," he said slowly, "they don't have any of that." "They have nothing," confirmed. "They are made in factories by machines. No one thinks about anything when making them except efficiency. They are empty, hollow, poison to my kind." "But surely other restaurants—" "We have tried them all." His voice became heavy with sadness. "Has been searching this station for weeks. She has visited every food vendor she could find. Most are closed now because of the consortium's laws. The few that remain, their food is made quickly, carelessly, without thought. It keeps her body alive but her spirit starving." Thought about the spice merchant who used to spend hours grinding his spices by hand, humming old songs from his. He thought about the fungal specialist who talked to her mushrooms like they were her children. They had both cared about their craft. They had both put love into their work. And they were both gone. Yours was the last shop she visited, said. She told me she felt something the moment she walked in, something alive, something real. She said your restaurant smelled like hope. Looked around at his dark, empty restaurant. He had been about to abandon it forever. He had been about to break his promise to his grandmother. But now a tiny dragon was curled up on his counter, and a giant dragon was asking him for help, and he realized that giving up was not something he knew how to do. It's not just, is it? He asked. Closed his ancient eyes. No, it is happening to young everywhere. As the consortium spreads its efficiency laws, traditional cooking disappears. Our hatchlings grow up in a galaxy where food has no soul. They sicken. They fade. They die. We are watching our children disappear, and we cannot stop it. The words hit like a punch to the stomach. He thought about, so small and so hungry. He thought about other little dragons across the galaxy, all of them starving for something that no one else could even see. I can't reopen the restaurant, he said quietly. The regulations are impossible. The taxes alone would. Forget regulations, said a small, tired voice. Had woken up. She lifted her head and looked at with her huge amber eyes. Cook for us, she said. Cook for everyone who is hungry for something real. We will find a way. The hatchling speaks wisdom, said. We have resources, influence. We can protect you from the consortium, at least for a time. What we cannot do is cook. That is a human gift. Stood up and walked to his grandmother's menu, which was still rolled up in his bag. He took it out and unrolled it, looking at the paintings of dishes from around the world. Each one represented centuries of tradition. Each one carried the love of countless cooks who had made it before him. His grandmother had not asked him to open a successful business. She had asked him to share his heritage with the stars. She had asked him to keep the tradition alive. Maybe this was what she meant. Okay, said. He was surprised by how steady his voice sounded. I'll cook, but I'm going to need more ingredients than what I have left. Scales flashed bright blue, and she made a sound that might have been a dragon's version of a laugh. Grandfather, she said, I told you he would help. I told you humans don't give up easily. Rose to his full height, which meant his head pressed against the ceiling. His golden eyes looked down at with something that might have been respect. No, the ancient dragon agreed. They don't. It is one of the things we have always admired about them. He turned toward the door. I will return tomorrow with supplies, and I will spread the word through our communication networks. Every in the galaxy will know that a human on station 7 makes food that can heal our children. Watched him leave, then looked back at. The little dragon had fallen asleep again, her belly full, her scales glowing softly in the darkness. He turned on the lights. He cleaned the kitchen. And he started planning his menu for tomorrow. Part 3, The Underground Kitchen. 1 month later, was not running a restaurant anymore. He was running a revolution. It started small, brought 3 more young to the shop on the second day. They were all thin and weak like had been, fed them simple meals, vegetable soup, fresh bread, rice with beans and spices. By the end of the week, their scales were shining. Word spread through the communication network. This network was ancient, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. It could reach every corner of known space without using any technology the consortium could block or monitor. Within 2 weeks, ships started arriving at 7. The first non-visitor was had heard of them but never seen one. They were not a single creature but many creatures sharing one mind. Thousands of small insect-like beings that moved together and thought together as one consciousness. This particular was having problems. Its parts were not working together properly anymore. Thoughts were getting lost. Memories were disappearing. We have tried everything, they said, speaking through 100 tiny mouths at once. Doctors, medications, nothing helps. Then we heard about you. Did not know if his food could help a hive mind. But he remembered the big community dinners his grandmother used to host, where dozens of people would sit around long tables and share plates of food and stories and laughter. He made Ethiopian food, injera bread, soft and spongy, meant to be torn and shared. Spicy stews in bright colors, served on one big platter. Food that required everyone to eat together from the same dish at the same time. They spread across 3 tables and ate. As they ate, something changed. The scattered parts began moving in harmony again. Thoughts that had been lost found their way home. By the end of the meal, there was whole again. "What did you put in this food?" they asked, amazed. "Community," said. "That's what this food is for, bringing people together." After that, the visitors came faster. A poet arrived next. He was very old and very famous, but he had not written anything in decades. He said his words had dried up like water in a desert. Made him mole negro, a Mexican sauce with 27 ingredients that his grandmother used to spend 2 days preparing. It was chocolate and chili and spices and history, all cooked together into something that tasted like a poem itself. He ate slowly, with tears running down his long face. The next morning, he wrote an epic that would be studied for centuries. Then came the mechanical ascendants. They were beings who had replaced their organic bodies with machines. They did not need to eat. They could not taste. They had given up flesh for immortality and efficiency. But 3 of them came to his restaurant and asked if they could simply watch him cook. "Why?" asked. "We have heard," one of them said, "that you put something invisible in your food. We want to see if our sensors can detect it." Shrugged and started cooking. He made lasagna, layer by layer, the way his grandmother had taught him. As he worked, he talked about his family. He told stories about Sunday dinners with cousins and aunts and uncles. He hummed songs his mother used to sing in the kitchen. When he finished, he looked up and saw something he would never forget. The 3 mechanical ascendants were crying, not tears of water because they had no water, tears of coolant leaking from their optical sensors. "We can feel it," one of them whispered. "We cannot taste your food, but we can taste your movements, your intention, your love. It is the most beautiful thing we have experienced since we gave up our flesh." They became regular visitors after that. They would sit in the corner and watch cook, and sometimes they would close their optical sensors and just listen to the sounds of the kitchen. Through all of this, stayed by side. She had grown almost a foot taller now. Her scales were brilliant blue, bright enough to light up a dark room. She helped him in the kitchen, her small claws surprisingly good at chopping vegetables and stirring pots. She had become his partner, his assistant, his friend. But they both knew that the good times could not last forever. The consortium had noticed. Inspector arrived on a Tuesday morning. He was a bureaucrat, tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes that had never shown warmth. Behind him floated 4 enforcement drones, their weapons humming softly. "Human," said, looking around the crowded restaurant with disgust. "You are in violation of 17 nutritional efficiency codes. You are serving food without a license. You are operating in a zone designated for approved nutrition dispensaries only. Your operation is terminated, effective immediately." Felt his heart sink. He had known this was coming. He had tried to prepare himself for it, but now that it was here, he did not know what to do. Then landed on his shoulder. She spread her wings wide. Even though she was still small, her wings seemed to fill the whole restaurant, and she roared. It was not a loud roar. It was not an angry roar. It was something else entirely. It was a sound that contained power beyond anything had ever experienced. The windows shook. The air vibrated. It exploded in his hands. The 4 enforcement drones crashed to the ground, their weapons dead. "This human," declared, and her small voice now carried the authority of a species that had watched stars be born and die, "is under protection. He feeds our children. He heals our sick. Touch him, and you answer to the eternal flame." Stared at her. His gray face became even grayer. He looked at the broken drones, at the destroyed, at the tiny dragon whose eyes now burned like small suns. Then he ran. Looked at, his heart still pounding, eternal flame. "It is what we call ourselves when we are being serious," said. Her eyes returned to normal, and she suddenly looked like a tired young dragon again. "I hope I never have to use that voice again. It gives me a headache." Laughed even though he was still scared. He knew would return. He knew the consortium would not accept this insult. He knew that bigger trouble was coming. But for now, his restaurant was still open. His customers were still eating, and a small dragon was still sitting on his shoulder, ready to fight for him. That was enough. Part 4. The Consortium's Answer. The Consortium did not send inspectors next time. They sent a battle cruiser. It arrived 3 weeks after ran away. Saw it through the window of his restaurant, a massive ship blocking out the stars. It was longer than the entire station and covered in weapons that could destroy planets. His customers stopped eating and stared. Some of them looked scared. Others looked angry. A few of them began to glow softly, preparing for a fight. "No," said quietly, "not yet. Let's see what they want first." A shuttle descended from the battle cruiser and docked at the station. An hour later, the door to his restaurant opened, and director walked in. She was not like, had been a small bureaucrat easy to frighten, was something else entirely. She was the head of the entire nutritional efficiency division, one of the most powerful people in the consortium. Her body had been designed to intimidate, tall and angular and cold. Her eyes had no pupils, just smooth silver surfaces that reflected everything they saw. She said, her voice was calm and pleasant, which made it more frightening. "The human cook, I have heard so much about you." Put down the knife he was using to chop vegetables. "Director, would you like something to eat?" "I do not eat," she said. "I receive nutrition through direct injection. It is more efficient." "That sounds sad." Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am not here to discuss philosophy. I am here to inform you of a change in your circumstances." She pulled out a data device and projected an image into the air. It showed official consortium documents, covered in stamps and seals. "Effective immediately," she said. "Station 7 is now the property of Corp, a subsidiary of the consortium. All non-standard food preparation is prohibited anywhere on this station. All current residents have 72 hours to leave." Felt the blood drain from his face. "You bought the entire station just to shut me down." "I bought the entire station to restore efficiency," corrected. "Your little restaurant has caused significant problems. Species are traveling across the galaxy for your food instead of consuming approved nutrition. Productivity is suffering. Order is being disrupted." She stepped closer to him. Her silver eyes reflected his face. "You have 72 hours, mister. I suggest you use them to pack." She turned and walked out. For a long moment, nobody in the restaurant spoke, then flew up and landed on the counter in front of. "What do we do?" she asked. Looked at his grandmother's menu, still hanging on the wall. He looked at his customers, who were watching him with hope and fear and trust. He looked at the kitchen where he had spent the last month cooking food that healed and connected and brought joy. "We cook," he said. He did not sleep for the next 72 hours. He cooked everything, every recipe in his grandmother's book, every dish he remembered from childhood, every technique humanity had developed across 10,000 years of civilization. He made bread and stew and roasted meat and delicate pastries. He made simple peasant food and complex royal feasts. He made breakfast and lunch and dinner and dessert and snacks and everything in between. And broadcast it all. The communication network could reach every corner of the galaxy. It was older than the consortium and could not be blocked or censored. Set up a connection and pointed it at its kitchen. The most watched cooking stream in galactic history began. Billions of beings watched dice onions. Trillions listened as he explained why his grandmother always added a little sugar to her tomato sauce. Quadrillions experienced, for the first time in their lives, what it meant to cook with love. He told stories while he cooked. He talked about his grandmother, who had kept her restaurant open through wars and disasters, because she believed that feeding people was the most important job in the universe. He talked about his mother, who had taught him that food was how you showed love when words were not enough. He talked about humanity, and how his species had carried recipes across oceans and mountains and finally to the stars. By the second day, the comment section of the stream was filled with beings from every species asking the same question: how can we help? By the third day, the answer arrived. When the consortium forces came to escort off the station, they found the docking bay blocked by 12,000 ships. They had come from everywhere. Vessels, ancient and beautiful, their hulls shining like gold. Swarm ships, each one carrying millions of individuals who had learned to stay connected by eating together. Mechanical ascendant cruisers, crewed by beings who could not taste but who remembered what it meant to feel. Poetry barges, merchant traders, garden ships filled with living plants. And more, so many more. Species had never served, had never met, had never even heard of. All of them had watched his stream. All of them had seen what food could mean. All of them had decided that they would not let the consortium take that away. Stood on the bridge of her battle cruiser and stared at the fleet blocking her path. "This is illegal," she said into her communication device. "You are interfering with official consortium business. Disperse immediately or face military action." The response came from Sovereign himself. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of, "Director, I am old. I remember the universe before your consortium existed. I will remember it after your consortium is gone. You are threatening a being who saves the children of my species. I suggest you consider your next words very carefully." Looked at her tactical display. 12,000 ships. Some of them were small and weak, but many of them were not. The vessels alone carried enough firepower to turn her battle cruiser into dust. She could win this fight, maybe, but the cost would be enormous. "Stand by," she said. The standoff lasted 6 hours. Then something unexpected happened. A shuttle launched from its battle cruiser, but it was not heading toward the station with weapons armed. It was heading toward the docking bay with its doors open. It was followed by another shuttle, and another, and another. Her own crew was abandoning the ship. They lined up at its restaurant. Hundreds of consortium workers and soldiers and officers, all of them tired and gray and hungry. "We watched your stream," one of them said too. "We've been eating cubes for years. We forgot what real food tasted like. We forgot what it felt like to enjoy a meal. We want to remember." Fed them all. Finally, 6 hours into the standoff, a single shuttle descended from the battle cruiser. Director stepped out, alone, and walked into the restaurant. She found at his stove, stirring a pot of short rib stew. His grandmother's recipe, the one she made for special occasions. The one she said could fix anything. "You have destabilized the entire nutritional economy," said. "No," replied, not looking up from his cooking. "I have reminded people what they were missing." He ladled stew into a bowl and held it out to her. She stared at it for a long moment. Her silver eyes reflected the steam rising from the surface. Then slowly she took the bowl. She ate one bite. And for the first time in her long, efficient, carefully optimized life, Director cried. Part 5, The Feast That Fed a Galaxy. Director finished the entire bowl of stew. Then she asked for another one. Then she sat in the corner of the restaurant for 3 hours without speaking, just staring at the wall and occasionally wiping her eyes. The standoff ended that night. Returned to her battle cruiser, but she did not give orders to attack. Instead, she opened a communication channel to consortium headquarters and did something that no director had ever done before. She resigned. Her final report was only one sentence long. "We have been measuring the wrong things." The news spread faster than light. The director of the Nutritional Efficiency Division had eaten human food, cried in public, and quit her job. The entire galaxy was talking about it. More importantly, the entire galaxy was asking the same question. What was in that food? The answer was complicated. It was not magic. It was not a secret ingredient. It was something that most species had forgotten about, something that the consortium had spent decades trying to eliminate because it was messy and unpredictable and impossible to measure. It was love. It was tradition. It was the memory of every cook who had made that dish before, passing down not just recipes but pieces of their hearts. The consortium tried to continue with the nutritional efficiency mandate, but nobody was listening anymore. Workers refused to eat their cubes. Citizens demanded restaurants. Entire planets started growing real food again, even though it was less efficient than manufacturing nutrients in factories. Within a year, the mandate was officially repealed. In its place, the Galactic Senate passed the Cultural Preservation Act. This new law recognized cooking as protected heritage for all species. Traditional food preparation could not be taxed, banned, or regulated by efficiency standards. Every culture had the right to maintain its culinary traditions. Was invited to speak at the signing ceremony. He almost said no. He was a cook, not a politician, but convinced him. "You started this," she said. "You should see it finished." So he stood before the Galactic Senate, a human chef in a stained apron, and he told them about his grandmother. "She never left Earth," he said. "She ran a tiny restaurant in a small town that most people have never heard of. She fed maybe 100,000 people in her whole life. By galactic standards, that is nothing. A rounding error, completely insignificant." He paused and looked at the thousands of senators watching him. But every single one of those people remembered her food. Every single one of them carried a piece of her with them when they left her restaurant. She fed their bodies, yes, but she also fed something else, something that does not show up on nutritional labels, something that cannot be measured in calories or efficiency scores. He held up his grandmother's menu, the hand-painted paper that had traveled with him across the galaxy. "This is what she gave me. Not just recipes, not just techniques. She gave me the understanding that feeding people is sacred, that sharing food is how we connect, that cooking with love creates something that exists beyond the physical ingredients." He rolled up the menu and looked directly at the cameras that were broadcasting his words to trillions of beings. The consortium almost took that away. They almost convinced the galaxy that food is just fuel and eating is just maintenance. They were wrong, and I hope we never forget that again. The Cultural Preservation Act passed unanimously. Returned to Station 7, but his restaurant had changed. It was not one restaurant anymore. It was a school. Beings came from across the galaxy to learn from him, not just to copy his recipes, but to understand the philosophy behind them. He taught an even mechanical ascendance. He taught them that every species had its own culinary traditions, its own food memories, its own ways of putting love onto a plate. "I cannot teach you to cook human food," he told each new class. "That is my heritage, not yours, but I can teach you how to find the soul in your own cooking. The techniques are different, the ingredients are different, but the love is the same." Became his partner in this mission. She had grown to full size now, a dragon of magnificent proportions whose scales shone like sapphires. She could have ruled star systems if she wanted. The Sovereign Council offered her positions of great power and responsibility. She turned them all down. "My place is here," she said, "in the kitchen, teaching what taught me." She specialized in working with young, teaching them to cook so they would never again face the starvation that had nearly killed her. But she also taught young humans and young members of every other species. She believed that cooking was a language everyone could speak. Years passed, decades grew old as humans do. On his last day, he was in his kitchen, teaching a class of young cooks from 6 different species. He was showing them how to make congee, the same dish he had made for on the night they met. His hands were shaking, as his grandmother's hands had shaken when she gave him her menu, but his voice was still strong. "The secret," he said, stirring the pot slowly, "is patience and memory. You cook this dish while thinking about everyone who has ever made it before you. All those cooks, all that love, all those people who fed their families this same food for thousands of years. You are not just making rice porridge. You are connecting yourself to everyone who came before you." He turned off the heat and smiled at his students. "Now you try." He died that night peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was the largest the galaxy had ever seen. Ships came from every corner of known space. Species that had never met each other stood side by side and mourned together. The Galactic Senate declared a day of remembrance. Billions of beings cooked their own traditional dishes and ate them in his honor. Spoke at the ceremony. She was crying, but her voice did not shake. "Was a cook," she said. "That is how he would want to be remembered, not as a revolutionary or a hero or a symbol, just a cook who loved feeding people. He saved my life with a bowl of rice porridge. He saved the life of my entire species by reminding the galaxy that food has a soul, and he saved countless others by teaching them to cook with love." She held up a copy of his grandmother's menu. The original was too fragile to display, carefully preserved in a museum now, but copies hung in every Terra's Table restaurant across the galaxy. "He asked me to share this with all of you. He said that his grandmother wanted him to share humanity's heritage with the stars. He spent his whole life doing that, and now it is our turn to continue." There are 10,000 Terra's Table restaurants now, spread across the galaxy. Every one of them has a copy of that menu on the wall. Every one of them teaches cooks to prepare food with love and tradition and memory. Some of them are run by humans. Many are not. And beings of every species have learned that cooking is not about the ingredients or the recipes or the techniques. It is about connection. It is about love. It is about feeding something that exists beyond the body. And in every kitchen, in every restaurant, there is a small shrine with 2 images. One is a human chef with kind eyes and a stained apron. The other is a tiny blue dragon, no bigger than a tugging at his sleeve and saying the words that changed the galaxy. "Don't leave." He never did. Through his food, through his teaching, through the tradition he passed on, is still feeding the stars. And he always will be.